the theme or the topic in 2 words, being present. Being present. That's the theme for tonight. And why we bring this is that the words we use, although the words, they are not the actual conscious effort, and the words about the effort or the words about the work are not the work. However, the words are, for us as intellectual animals, they can open new portals of understanding. And this practice of self-remembering, which is essential in the 4th way, and it's essential in many paths, although they call it different way. In the way of the monk, in the Philokalia, they talk about wakefulness, trisvi, wakefulness, or the practice of guarding of the mind, or in other teachings they talk about being aware of oneself. Or Eckhart Tolle talks about the power of now and being present. Eckhart Tolle uses this quite a bit. Presence, self-observation, witnessing, be here and now, Ramdas. All of these, they refer to the same thing. And here we used in our circle a lot of this observe or remember yourself. And I know from my experience that we can lock into some word, like a word as self-remembering, and then our mind makes something. There is some meaning that what this means, self-remembering, and then it's followed by a certain wordless effort, ideally. But then that effort is linked to the term self-remembering, and then we may run the risk of, if we keep using the same term, it can become dry or mechanical, or we may keep doing a certain something that might be limited. And in my experience with this work, it is useful. Sometimes I notice that some new formulation will open my understanding in a certain way that will deepen the understanding and then change the actual effort. Especially with self-remembering, it is, and Gurdjieff said that would be the most famous, and the essence of the 4th way said, remember yourself always and everywhere. However, in my case, I didn't know what the self is. I didn't know who am I really. However, everybody was using this term. Therefore, my self-remembering was something based on my understanding at that time, where there was no understanding of the self. And other teachers or other terms, they will lock that practice a little bit. They open it, unlock it. And Peter and myself, we found that this term being present contains very rich of wisdom and pointers in it, and that's what we want to focus on to unpack this little treasure box, this being present. And ultimately, whatever we try to do here, to remember to do here more frequently, more longer, is to be present, And the so-called zazen or meditation is being present. Now there are different aspects here of being present Meaning what? What do you mean to be present? So this being present has this connotation of simply attending or paying attention to something. Attending. Being present doesn't mean that you would change it. We are not trying to change whatever we are present to. Often the imaginary eye gets into some doing of trying to change something, fight something, based on some misunderstanding, and that is a trap. Also, before we can change some actual manifestation or a pattern or in the fourth way and in other teachings too, before we can change an actual something, it's important to realize we can't change it initially. And what we can do is we can observe it and be present to it. And this accumulation of being present to that something, melancholy, fear, urge, that in itself brings this higher dimension of consciousness that is witnessing that something. So being present and witnessing is the same. But you see, it's kind of different, but it's the same. It can, and for various people, different body types, different center of gravity, some of these terms have a better grip and can open new horizons. So before we can change something, we need to observe it, be present to it a lot. And many things that we are present to, many of them will change just by the being present to them. Another dimension of this practice of being present is, okay, being present to what? And here we can fall back to what we have studied so far that appears in non-dual teachings or some non-dual teachings, Francis, as well as in the Tibetan Dzogchen practice, and we refer to as the brothers practice, the three brothers. Is being present to four things, being present to three, being present to the eyes, to the what arises. That's what we are present to. We are being present to what arises. What arises are in the mind, thoughts, images, voices, in the body, feelings and sensations, states of feeling, moods. And as far as the world is concerned, being present to this arising of sound waves, sounds, visuals, smells. And this is what it's called mindfulness. Being present, it's important to have this, to have a more full being present, and to watch out for the tendency to be more present to some aspect of our being, more thoughts, and ignore the body with the feelings and sensations. Or being present to this, but not being present to sounds and to these external sense perceptions. It's important to not pick and choose and to have this more of a global sense of being present to these phenomena. Although it is natural for us to access this being present on one angle, we can access it, and that's what usually happens. I'm walking about the street and then I catch myself in imagination, then I'm looking, then I access the present moment through seeing the clouds, and not thinking about the clouds. So I'm accessing the present through the portal of external sense perceptions. Or sometimes something is happening in my body, there's a trigger that wakes me up, that should wake us up. Whenever there's some activity that is unpleasant, it's great to make the habit, whenever something's unpleasant, to start wake up, to be more present to it. We can access the being present practice through something in the body, or through something in the mind. But if we just now limit the being present practice to one thing, it's going to be weak. We don't have enough tethers in the present. Therefore, it's important to develop this practice of, even if we access through one portal, to open to the globality of what's in the present. Another aspect about this being present is because it has the word present. We can only be present to what's in the present, what's here and now. That's why in the Buddhism, in the Zen, there's a big emphasis on, hey, drop the story, drop this, there's a mind, the waves of the mind, just here and now. When you drink, just drink. When you sit, just sit. Meaning, just be present to sitting. Don't check out somewhere else, be somewhere else. So being present to the activity at hand. We can only be present in the present. Also, even when we catch ourselves in imagination, you see, when our imagination, that's why imagination is an obstacle, because we are not present. We come back. Or we catch ourselves spinning in some inner considering, what will they think of me? Then we wake up to it, and then we simply observe the inner considering in the body, the thoughts in the present. Eckhart Tolle. All right, so next step here, the very important thing is that being present to these three realms, mind, body, world, or another way, the centers, intellectual center, emotional center, stimulus center, moving center. But that is it's a way to get in the game. We are bringing ourselves back from under the water of second state, of whatever that aspect of sleep is. So we get ourselves in the game. But then we want to go beyond just this mindfulness and to be present to not just thoughts, feelings, sensations, and sounds, but to be present to that which is being present. So this, you can see this word being present contains so much. Being present to this, the silence of being, the unchanging. Being present to this phenomena and being present to the sense of being, now that is nice self-remembering practice. And another element, and before I pass it to Peter, is this question of who is being present, or what is being present. Because for many years I was being present, but I was not looking into, didn't know, didn't question, didn't investigate, nobody asked me, hey, who is being present? And because I didn't have this guidance, I would just be devoted to this effort, and was done from the standpoint of Mihai is being present. What do you mean? Me, Mihai, which was investigated. So it was the subject, that which is being present, was trying to be present to the objects, but was not questioning itself. They didn't know. So at some point, and some point soon, like you to save you guys time, to look into that which is being present, that which is hearing now. That which is aware of sensation. Although we don't want to make this too much of a mindfuckery or too complex thing, because the effort of being present more frequently and more often will lead us there. Peter, anything you have prompted by what I said or by your 45 years of being present?
I was thinking that about it. It's sort of the reverse of it is what's going on with us when we're not present. And this relates to the idea that in terms of self-remembering, the one way it was described is the moment, the very moment that you realize you have not been remembering yourself, which means the very moment that you realize you are not present, you've not been present because you've been lost in a momentum or lost in imagination, lost in identification, lost in inner considering, whatever it is, that very moment that you realize that is self-remembering. That is presence itself, awake, aware. And then it's kind of a contradiction when we say, be present. Mihai saying, who is being present? Yes, because what happens is, and it's natural and it's normal and it's fine, and it is actually a dimension of self-remembering. Self-remembering presence has many dimensions, and one is the moving center trying to be present. And people who are moving centered will experience, will try to be present through the moving center. The moving center will do its version of being present, which is fine. And the instinctive center will do that, and the emotional center, intellectual center, they all will do their own version, and that's fine. And then something else will come in that is the real, what is called real self-remembering, or presence itself, awareness, conscious as itself. Presence does not become present to itself. It becomes presence as presence. But this idea of trying to catch yourself in that, get a taste. What I'm suggesting is it's a taste. It's the best taste of what it really is when you realize you've not been there. You've not been here. Where have you been? Where was I? I didn't see the beauty as I was walking down the street. I didn't see the person's face in front of me when I was talking to. Where was I? And so presence was not there. Presence was dampened. Presence was veiled, submerged. This taste, you can taste it a little bit in our silence portions of the meeting, although you can also notice how something keeps trying to take us away. The centers keep trying to interfere, take us away. But try to taste it and consider, where are you and what's going on when you're not present? Is because it's very simple, this thing, present. It actually is very simple. It's right here. Being right here just means knowing you're in the room. That's all I got, Mihai, right now.
Another inbuilt little jewel in this term of being present. All right, let's back up a little bit. Some things can exist only when we are not being present, as this daydreaming phenomena. So from one angle and from any angle, we cannot be present to being in imagination and the imagination to continue. Those two are excluding each other. We may be, as the last commentary or some kind of past future tripping is happening, our presence is getting more on, and then we catch that last bit, and then presence is more, dimmer switch is stronger, then it stops. I said the more the presence is online, imagination stops. And we can even have this, it's interesting that even as presence was more asleep, we can still know how, whoa, I've been thinking about this stuff, a bunch of stuff. Even when we're not present with them, we can remember what was it about. Although it's not a good effort to try to remember what was an imagination about, because now I'm going back in imagination into the mind. Therefore, when you come back to not to analyze too much, what was that sleep? Okay, some things stop as soon as we are more present, like imagination. However, there are other things, a feeling, a natural feeling, a negative emotion, impatience, resentment, sadness, fear. We are present to it, witnessing it, and then it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. That's how it works. You see that. You probably already observed that. And therefore, the work is to be present to that color of the energy. In being present, there is this inbuilt secret jewel of what some non-dual teachings talk about, welcoming or let go resisting. Like a correct being present is that there is this feeling, and then I am just being present to this feeling in the body. If I become less present, then this feeling will ooze thoughts and stories. But I'm trying to not go with the oozing, the emanations of this going into the head. And we're just being present to the actual experience of that unpleasantness, that emotion, that this or that. And yeah, so that's very important to watch out for the trap of trying to change, to trying to get rid of, trying to even this. That's why in the teachings they talk about the welcome. If there's any unpleasantness, notice where it is and welcome it completely. Means don't resist it. Rupert will say to train yourself, to coach yourself. There is some sense of loneliness in the evening, or there is this mysterious pesky thing like, oh, what if I'm going to, this relationship will end and then I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life, and I may die alone. I may die alone. You see thoughts, but underneath there's this state, and we acknowledge these thoughts. These are important thoughts to acknowledge and to really be crisp about these thoughts. These are not just random thoughts. These are important thoughts. But then, not to keep this and more thoughts, more mental, but to try to cleanly be present to this state that is called loneliness or fear of being alone. As a well-paid scientist that doesn't want to interfere, we don't want to interfere. And no rushing for this to go away. This is hard. I mean, I was teaching this stuff and I was still resisting this stuff, some of them. So the sooner you get a hang of this, whenever there's something unpleasant, now I learned, when there was something really unpleasant, I just even lie down. I just lie down, and I have the work eye, so to say, the wise counsel that is like, hey man, I just want to be with this, like fully let it be here. Rupert will have this pointer. Tell yourself, can I be with this for the rest of my life? This doesn't need to change. This is a strong statement may evoke like, no, hell no, I don't like this. So, which is cool because it evokes the other eye of resisting, being afraid of feeling it, not wanting to feel this. And then once you even do the one time, it is special. There's a more pesky, unpleasant, yucky feeling state, which actually has, that's really the sense of separation is right there. I'm going to be alone. I'm alone in the world. Take the words out. And if one succeeds even one time to really welcome it, being present to it, not resist it, for a few minutes, it will change. it will change. It will becomes less unpleasant. It has less of that bite. And then you'll be like, whoa, this really works. Then it will give you courage to face these states. And the trap is I used to do this a lot, to use fourth way practices of attention or non-dual practices of welcoming with the secret agenda that they will go away. Or even KI, some psychotherapeutical modality to do some kind of make the emotion conscious by repeating into it, I'm sad, 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 which initially this practice was meant to help us make conscious this energy and to know what it says while being very present to it. But then the ego can take any practice and try to use this being present so that this bad feeling will go away. So watch out for this.
Also, negative emotions, particularly intense negative emotions, this is the most difficult case, to remain present, right there with them, watching them, to be right there, not be pulled in, to truly be neutral and see what's going on. And this is the most intense, the most demanding. This is why the fourth way puts emphasis on the transformation of negative emotions. This is no small thing. This is it. If you can do this, if you can stay present when there are negative emotions circulating and truly not identify with them, this is the catalyst. And this is deep, serious inner presence going on. And that's the key, not to identify. And what can happen is there's a physiological aspect to negative emotions and a psychological aspect. And when Mihai says you look at the negative emotion, what will happen is sometimes you can stop the psychological wheel from spinning. All the embroidery, the emotion, the I, me, the story, this and that. But the physiological part doesn't go away. It doesn't disappear because it's not imagination. The psychological aspect is imagination. The physiological thing that's happening in the body related to a negative emotion is, in one sense, real. It's very real for us as humans. And it's not going away, but that's where this energy is that we're ultimately transforming. The psychological part, we're just transcending it. We're seeing through it. It's based on an illusion of I. And then I'm weaving a story about me relative to something. To move beyond that means staying very present, seeing through that whole charade, that whole hologram, if you will, and then absorbing this energy, this pressure that's still there in the body. But I wanted to emphasize this is the most difficult case. This is where this work can lead to individually. This is the most demanding. These are the saints overcoming their demons, the dark night of the soul, all of these things that are talked about. This is what it is. And then if it's related to real suffering, the real suffering is there. It's real. That's why it's called real in the fourth way. It's the unnecessary suffering that is the psychological coating on it. And that's what we can be free from. And then the real suffering is energy, very intense energy that can be used as a catalyst. But this, as I say, this requires remaining very present. And this is why we try to be present and try to self-remember and learn what this means. We're developing this capacity. That's what Peter Ouspensky said. You have to develop the capacity for self-remembering. And this is what happens. This capacity becomes stronger. But it begins even just walking across the room. Can you remain present as your moving center carries you across the room, all the way across the room, just to get a cup of coffee? That's how difficult it is. Are you really present? Is presence there, present? Or has it lapsed? It's gotten pulled into the moving center. Now it is the moving center walking across the room. The same thing with talking. Can you actually say an entire sentence and remain something else is still there present as you speak? The entire sentence, not just the first two words or the first three words. And this is why we do these exercises. All of these exercises we practice are related to exactly this. And they're related to engaging our intellectual parts of centers to creep closer to this, developing this capacity for presence. Really, the intellectual parts of centers, at their best, what they're doing is they are honoring presence. They are serving presence. And they do this with attention. It's us harnessing attention and bringing it as close as we can to the threshold of pure presence, pure awareness. Attention is an outcome of awareness, an outcome of presence. You could say it's a lower dimension of presence. And what's missing is the awareness as itself. And this is what the intellectual parts of centers are doing. They're bringing us, trying to go back up to where presence can recognize itself. And these are all practice. And then when the negative emotions come, we have our real test. Thank you.
Yeah, some things prompted by what Peter said. So it's a clarification, this when we say presence. Also when I was younger, the way I misunderstood or the way I was misexplained was the presence. I was supposed to make a lot of effort as a Mihai to reach presence. And this presence was really juicy and special. And then I was supposed to hold on to this presence as a Mihai. And that is a fruitless, I mean, it's not fruitless. It is useful kind of work to realize that it doesn't work. And the attempt itself, it is good. But what is being present is the presence. The presence is what is being present. And this presence is what we call consciousness or awareness. And I like what our friend Paul Hederman will try to demystify this presence, to say, hey, this is not a special awareness. This which is like aware now, hearing this, that's not a mystical awareness, that's dog shit awareness. And on this line of what Peter said, that actually Peter Engel and Peter Uspensky and Gurdjieff, they would say that on this octave of being conscious, this octave, this endeavor, which goes through various steps, and it has various impasses, intervals where we lose the juice. It's hard, or it's boring, or maybe I should do something else. So in this octave of awakening, which is a whole lifetime, we need to bridge certain intervals. They are called in the fourth way. We haven't talked about this. We'll do a meeting later about this, the law of 3, law of 7. But without getting too technical now, on this octave of awakening, we need to have 2 engines, or to give ourselves, it's necessary to have 2 conscious shocks. It's called the 2 conscious shocks to jolt us into more awakening. And they were called, the first one is self-remembering, or being present. So we start with that. The first conscious shock. For everybody in the world, they go about the day with trying to survive and get food and mates and stability and all of that. And we have the same thing. We have the same operation going on, but we are trying to add, to give ourselves the first conscious shock as often, as frequently as possible, more being present. And it starts in calm moments, when we are feeling available, when we remember, when we are walking, when it's peaceful. So that's how we do it. The first conscious shock being this being present or self-remembering, and the second conscious shock, which is necessary to really go deeper, is the transformation of suffering. And transformation of suffering is the same as the first conscious shock. It's being present to the suffering without embroidering it, without resisting it. But one cannot engage in a second conscious shock, in the transformation of suffering, if we are not versed and interested and have practiced the first conscious shock, being present. I usually use this metaphor of the end of a relationship, or a big shock in your life, or adversity, or sickness, or various emotional shocks that are real. These are, if we try to be present to those and remember ourselves to those, it's like akin to being thrown overboard into a hurricane level 4. We can't swim hurricane level 4 unless we have been doing our laps in the swimming pool and in the lake and in the river. And on this And maybe we can end this part of explaining, opening to questions. But I found from Suzuki Roshi, I found something very nice. This is a little booklet where students, they share their experience with him or what happened or what he said, little instances. On the fourth day of the Sesshin, which is a meditation retreat, and they were sitting on the cushion many hours a day. On the fourth day of Sesshin, as we sat with our painful legs, aching backs, hopes and doubts about whether it was worth it, Suzuki Roshi began his talk by saying slowly, "The problems you are now experiencing will go away." We were sure he was going to say. That's what the people, they thought, the problems you are now experiencing will go away. We were sure he was going to say. But Suzuki said, will continue for the rest of your life. He concluded. The way he said it, we all laughed. The problems you are now experiencing will continue for the rest of your life. Now, something will change. The relationship between, actually Suzuki was talking about this, I'm not sure why I keep bringing this Suzuki, it's in the field. He was saying when you have problems, when you are suffering, just sit and be present and find out what is more real, you or your problems. So the same way, these problems that we're experiencing, they will recur and repeat. But we are getting better at surfing them. And thusly they will diminish, and some of them will go away completely.